welcome our state national friends. Welcome to church, guys. We're glad we're part of your lives. Now, grab your Bibles and hold them up and say, this is my Bible. I am what it says I am. I am what it says I have. And I can do what the Bible says I can do. Today I'll be taught the Word of God. And I'm boldly confess. My mind is alert. My heart is receptive. And I'll never be the same again. Never, never, never in Jesus' name, amen. Yeah, that mind is alert is something I'm really confessing right now. Yeah, it's uncommon for me. I'm kidding. Turn to Genesis chapter 40. Yes, and on I go. There's someone wants you to think back. I was going to put it like this. If you want God to show up for you, you better know who you are when trouble comes.
True.
You know? And, you know, we've talked a lot about identity, which is part of our vision. But I want to look at, first of all, just Joseph this morning. So in verse 1 of chapter 40, it says that it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them inward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. Now, notice what's happening here. I mean, remember Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and all of that? And sometimes it's real easy when we're in those situations or when things are going on to kind of lose track of who we are or where we are or what we're supposed to do. But it's interesting here that in verse 3 where he says, the captain of the guard into prison, the place where Joseph was bound. God made sure that they came to him. Even though the enemy had thought he'd set him aside into a place where God couldn't use him anymore. Where the dreamer would just be a fanatic. To where he wouldn't have the influence that he thought he would. And yet, God brought them to him. And it's just something to just think about. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued the season inward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them. Each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, and were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. Now, what was Joseph doing in there? He was serving, right? He never stopped being who he was in all this. He never, or this shows here that he hadn't lost track of what his giftings were and what his purpose and call were. And he asked the Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the words of his Lord's house, saying, Wherefore look you so sad today? And they said unto him, We've dreamed a dream, and there's no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me then, I pray you. So, see, I love that that's not lost on him. He didn't see himself as an interpreter of dreams. He didn't. Even when he was talking to his brothers, he's like, God has showed me something. Show me something in the future that's going to happen that, we're going to take care of things and you guys are going to be with me. I'm going to be in an elevated position, but you all are going to be there too. And of course, they get offended. It's like, well, who are you to be elevated over us? Who do you think you are? In that, Joseph wasn't building himself up of, look at me and who I am, that God's going to use me in that way. Just like here, he's like, I'm not an interpreter. He didn't make himself of any reputation. But he never lost sight of who he was. And who do the interpretations belong to? God. So the same thing is with us. When we're needing that guidance, when we're needing that direction, an interpretation of dreams, as it were. An interpretation of direction, clarity on something. Who does that belong to? God. So who should we seek to get those answers? God. And sometimes, due to circumstances, people just lose sight of that. I mean, and, Marcel has been teaching on Tuesday nights about the parable of the sower. And we're going to go there in a little bit. Because there's just some things that stuck out to me, and I'm just like, hey, what about this? What about this? I wonder about this. But until then, let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 1. Now I'm going to go to a couple of the Old Testament people who, went through these things, who went through some pretty rough circumstances. Now think about it. Joseph went to prison, right? Then he got out of prison, right? And got placed in an elevated position. Then what happened to him? Life was great, wasn't it? No. Potiphar's wife wanted him. He said no. She accused him of something he didn't do. He ended up getting in trouble again. And then, what does God do? Raises him up to be a ruler, to prepare for what's coming, to take care of the people. And it's always, and we'll see this in a little bit too, that it's always about taking care of the people. And in Daniel 1, verse 8, it said, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your face worse, liking than the children which are your sword? Then shall you make me endanger my head to the king. Then Daniel said to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And one of the things that I still can't remember their names without looking it up, because what do we know them as? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And that time when Marcel was teaching about that, it's like, that's their slave name. This was who they were. This is their names. And yet, we still know them by their slave name. And it's hard. Remember a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about it's hard to unlearn something once you've learned it? I'm still struggling with that. But every time I hear their names, I always think about that teaching. I really do. That was just so significant in that. It says, prove thy servants, I beseech you, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. And let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenances of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them. And among them was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even to the first year of King Cyrus. And we know what happened later. They talked the king into putting a decree up saying that, when the bell rings, you're going to bow down and worship 3 times a day, or any time that it happens. And Daniel did what? As he always had done. He didn't change anything. He didn't change his habits. He didn't change his patterns. He did what he always did. And that's what God keeps pushing us to do, is to not change our commitments to him and his commitment to us, and recognizing what that is and what that looks like. To just always do that. It doesn't matter what the kings are doing or what decrees are out there. Baron Marcella sent us a deal last night, and it's something that started in September 29th of 2020. And this is kind of where they're at on it now. So I thought I'd just play it for you. Let's go ahead and play the first one. It's kind of interesting.
When Elias Boatberger goes to work, he doesn't need ID. And he doesn't need money. In fact, much of what he needs to get through the day is hidden right there, just below the surface, in his hand.
Like touch it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like a grain of rice.
Yeah, grain of rice.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Yeah, it's all in chips. I use it like to get around the building.
Buy snacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's buy some snacks.
Exactly.
So I can't open it.
No.
Okay.
So what I need to do is I need to first blink my chip, and it will log me in, and from there I get access to the fridge.
Popular TV shows like Black Mirror have imagined chips as part of a dystopian future.
Install in-grain procedure with local anesthetic and you're good to go.
In Sweden, the microchips are already here.
The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards.
Which have made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden.
No cash.
At this tech fair, a chipping event for those on the cutting edge, merging their hands with this new technology.
I thought it would be fun, right?
The process is simple and swift. A pinch of the skin, and in a matter of seconds, the chip is inserted. The transformation is complete. As for the pain,
I barely felt it.
but even in this nation of early adopters, not everyone is racing to get chipped.
Feel less human. I would feel like a robot.
I think, so much more data can go into this, and it's in your body.
There's no central registry tracking how many people are chipped, but biohacker Hannes Relblad estimates between 5 and 10,000.
In the future, do you think everyone is going to be chipped?
I think it will be voluntary, but I am certainly convinced that millions of people will find it very, very valuable to have a smart device under their skin.
Human microchipping may be our future, but in Sweden, it's already reality. Sarah Harmon, NBC News, Stockholm.
Okay, so that is in Sweden, where they've got this little thing implanted in your hand, right? We wouldn't do that, would we? No, that's in Sweden. Let's see if we would do this.
Move over Apple Pay. Amazon is trying to muscle its way into your digital wallet.
Amazon is ramping up its contactless payment system nationwide that works by scanning the palm of your hand right there. Kit Doe takes it for a test drive.
So the new payment systems have been rolling out across the country for the past year. Finally, here in the Bay Area, we get our very first one, and it launched this morning.
You really gotta hand it to Amazon.
Will you be paying with your palm today?
For trying to put the future of payments right in the palm of your, you know.
Right there, perfect.
It's called Amazon One, a new contactless payment system that launched for the first time in Northern California at their store in Santana Row. To sign up, first insert a credit card and then hold your hand over the special camera. It'll scan the lines, ridges, and even pattern of veins inside your hand. The algorithm then creates a unique palm signature. The whole process takes about a minute.
You can just hold your hand right over it?
Tommy Alas was the first person in the Bay Area to sign up.
What do you think?
I think it was really cool, very convenient form of payment, just quick and easy.
Liz Gonzalez thinks the new technology could come in handy. That was easy.
There you go.
People like me, I'm very forgetful. I always forget my credit card or my watch, and now I don't need to remember to bring my palm.
If anyone can get this popular, it'll be Amazon.
Ian Scher with CNET says all signs point to this new technology as being safe and reliable. In the past year, the company has rolled out the palm scanners to 60 locations around the country, including mobile ticketing for a concert venue in Denver and a number of Whole Foods locations. But for consumers, old habits die hard.
The reality is that a lot of introducing new technology is convincing people to use it. And how much easier is it to use than just pulling out my credit card and paying that way? But we Americans are very hesitant to jump on this stuff. And so I am curious to see whether or not it's really going to end up going anywhere with us, or whether we're going to wait until some other technology comes along.
In San Jose, Kit Doe, KPIX 5.
So
Move over Apple.
that's in California, which that's not a big surprise, but also Denver. And this has been going on for what, about 2 years now? So right now, you don't have to put anything in your hand. But they've got technology that'll recognize your vein in your palm. I mean, really? And it's like, I'm so forgetful. But I always have my hand with me. You idiot. Well, okay, she may or may not be an idiot. It could just be the mask that she's wearing, just keeping oxygen from flowing freely. So, but anyway, these things are happening right now, and we were talking about this earlier, and do I believe that, like, Amazon is particularly on purpose, knowingly going toward that with the idea of it being what it seems like it might be? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think that they're knowingly, on purpose, maliciously doing this. But like sheep being led to the slaughter. Just a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. Just to relax it so much. Marcel was talking about the first time that somebody used her chip on her card, on the credit card. I mean, she didn't know one did that at that time. You know, because it wasn't swiping, because I guess she used it so many times. You know, that we just, you know, wore it. And the guy behind the counter said, oh, look, see, if you just tapped it on the deal, it worked fine. And she's like, what'd you do? And these technologies, they're coming up. We've got, how many of you have facial recognition on your phone? Right? It just like, and doesn't your face work on her phone? Or because you're twins?
Without glasses.
Yeah, without glasses, because they're twins, their facial recognition works on each other's phones. So, I mean, yeah, so it's not perfect science. You know, It is that though. But, and it's like another one of these stories will say, well, we don't have like a database that we keep it in. Sure, right, okay. But they did say, it does go to the cloud though. What is the cloud? Exactly, it's a database. But that they think, and I guess some people are, that naive and that ignorant to just fall for this stuff. And so many people are. And you see where they're trying it first in Seattle, in California. I mean, if you're gonna try to some new crazy thing, that would be the best place to try it first, right? I mean, it really is, the techie places. So that doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm really talking about here. But when these things come up, I just want everyone to be current about what's out there, and don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. I know it's easy, and like just last week, we got one of those Alexis Spybots at our house. And since we got that thing, I've been like, I have a hard time using a person's name on this. And she found out, well, you can change afterward, just say computer. And I was like, okay, I feel a little better about that. It's doing the same thing. I mean, I'm not so naive thinking that, okay, well, that's better. It just makes me feel a little bit better about, because remember Star Trek did that, what they did? Yeah. Well, when they'd say computer, and then it talked to it like that. At least when you say computer, it makes it feel more like an it than if you assign a name to it and then call it like a person. Is the result the same? Are they gathering information? Are they, so the result's the same. It just makes me feel a little better about it. All right. Yeah. But you see how silly that is and how easy it is to get caught up in? But the convenience of it. And there's something about old school that I like. It's a little bit more difficult, a little bit more time consuming, but there's something about doing things old school that just, I don't know, makes me feel a little bit better about everything. People talk about getting off the grid. Here we're inviting the grid into our house. If somebody's trying to hide from, let's just say law enforcement at some level, what's one of the first things they get rid of that they normally carry? Their phone. Yeah. And they don't use a credit card with them. The movies have taught us that. So even though we know that these things are tracking devices, not just a Live 360 or whatever that thing is that you guys do. Well, they've got this app where, when one of them gets home, it says, such and such has just arrived home. And so, or is it Walmart or whatever? And it's like, well, okay, I guess it's okay for your spouse to have that kind of access. Are all the men nodding their heads? Because the ones where there was a question, the wives were looking at the men going, or let me put it this way, what man would dare not do that right now? No, I don't want that apple. Oh, really, why? So, but we understand that these things are technologies that we've embraced, right? And I've always said that I don't mind doing things public. I don't care if I'm being recorded by those devices because I'm not doing anything or saying anything that I wouldn't mind anybody knowing. I mean, so really, in that respect, it doesn't bother me. Having said that, if that changes a little bit, as far as privacy concerns or things, then I'll modify this. And then we'll have to just, I don't know, find out what the weather is the old-fashioned way, or look up a word the old-fashioned way. You know, because how many of us do that for a definition of something? Yeah, I mean, it's like, and then they've got those AI. I'm off on a tangent that I didn't intend on here, but, you know, anyway, I get off on a tangent. But they've got those AI, artificial intelligence things. They have a deal now that'll write your paper for you. Oh, yeah. You just tell it what you want it to do, and it just, you know, we think, and I think they're depending on it over our heads, so we're just like, okay. You know. Yeah. Just make it easy on us. Just make it easy. You know, we don't have to have written interviews anymore. And how many times, and look, I'll be the first, we had a crack in our ceiling. I went to YouTube. How do you fix this? Yeah, I watched a 15-minute video on it, how to fix it. You know, and we do that a lot. You know, we go to YouTube, and those are convenient things, aren't they? I appreciate that YouTube has those on there. I really do. So, but how intrusive will we allow these things to get in? We were talking about TikTok this morning, and Dee made a comment about that. Is the problem that the government has with TikTok the fact that of what it's doing, or that they don't have access to editing? You know, which is, and I'm not someone who uses TikTok, so I don't know. But why is it they have such a problem with that? Is it because they have no control? I mean, I'm just saying, could it be? You know, the saying of, you know, I need to get some new conspiracies because all my old ones came true. So these things, as they continue to come out like that, they're things that we do need to consider. And in Daniel chapter 6, I know, and there is no easy transition for me rambling. It is Daniel chapter 6, verse 3. It said, "Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because of an excellent spirit was in him. And the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Then the presidents and princes sought to find an occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, forasmuch as he was faithful." Faithful to what? God. His conviction. "Neither was there any error or fault found in him." That doesn't mean he was a perfect man, but regarding that, he was beyond reproach. And we talk about this with people. It's like, we have to be beyond reproach. That doesn't mean people lie about us and all that, but if somebody checks it out, like the documentary we did, I told him, you have free, you go check into my life and whatever, and compare that against everything else, and you publish what you want to, what you find to be the truth. Because I'm not afraid of the truth. Verse 5, "Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him serving the law of his God. Then these presidents and princes assembled themselves together to the king and said this unto King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom and governors and the princes and the counselors and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into a den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day, and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. See, this wasn't a new habit for him, was it? No, it's something he always did. This is kind of what I was alluding to before I went off on my tangent. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? And the king answered and said, the thing is true according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel, which is of the children, that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regards not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased within himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Then these men assembled to the king and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and the Persians is that no decree nor statute which the king established may be changed. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into a den of lions. Now the king spoke and said unto Daniel, Thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And it goes on, and we know what happened there, that Daniel got put in there, but he wasn't harmed, right? So, any decree, and I'm not anti-government. I'm anti-corrupt government. I'm not anti-politicians. I'm anti-lying politicians, or corrupt politicians, or incompetent politicians, or any other channels of authority. I'm not against those offices. I'm not against the purpose for those offices. But when they're corrupt and they go against what God has said, then it's not going to comply. Are there potential repercussions for that? Yes. Do you think Joseph didn't know that there were repercussions? Do you think that Daniel didn't know that there were repercussions? Do you think as we move forward in history of where we're at right now, that there's not going to be potential repercussions for obeying God? I mean, we've already dealt with that in 2020 when all that mess came about. And they're still trying to get people to do different things on that. Personally, we decided not to participate. And I know a lot of you did too. No matter what. It didn't matter. So what happens when the palm print becomes the avenue to buy? Isn't that what we're doing, some of the things that we're doing right now? Sure. You know, raising little quails, canning food, gardening, setting things aside that you might need. And those are just the things I'm willing to mention publicly. but all these other things. There's going to come a point, just like it did before, that we never thought would happen, that you comply or go without. And we've already decided what we're going to do. And when you've already made that decision, then there is no question, is there? I got this next thing out of, anybody remember Reader's Digest?
Yes.
The little comedy things. This was in humor in uniform. John, you'll appreciate this. When you're surrounded by your enemy, think of it as a target-rich environment. I was telling Dee, I was laughing about that. I was like, oh, I need to write that down. That's a good one. So I put it in my notes. I wanted to share that because it changes your perspective. When you're surrounded, it's like, oh yeah, a little closer, because now when this happens, I got to take out all of it. More of it. It's just. Does that make sense? So, I think that's good policy. It really does. It keeps you from being afraid when you're surrounded by your enemy. That you don't have to be afraid of what they're going to do to you. Just realize that God's drawing them in. Some will be influenced and changed. Some won't. All right. Now, if you would, please turn to the book of John and chapter 21. We doing okay? All right. So sometimes when I feel like I'm off course, I'll go back and listen to it later, and I'm like, oh, that flowed pretty good. A lot better than it felt like. In John chapter 21, verse 14, said, this is now the third time that Jesus showed himself to the disciples after that he was risen from the dead. So when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? And he said unto him, yea, Lord, you know I love you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? And he said to him, yea, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, feed my sheep. And he said unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, lovest thou me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things, and you know that I love you. And Jesus said unto him, feed my sheep. Remember earlier I was saying it's all about taking care of the people. It's more than just preaching the word. It's more than just being a sower of the word. But it's also feeding people. Taking care of their needs. And if we love God, and if we love Jesus, we'll do that, right? So, to withhold such a thing, what is it saying? Saying that we don't love Jesus, that we don't love God. If we withhold such a thing as help to who? His sheep. So I'm going to qualify that, as I always like to do. That doesn't include the whole world. Okay? And we're going to look at something here in a second that will kind of reinforce that. But we're responsible to care for each other. Peter was a disciple, right? Well, was he really in any kind of a position of authority or a ruler of anything? No, he was just one of the guys. Just one of the guys. And Jesus puts it out to us like, look, take care of each other. You know, if you really love me, then take care of your brothers and sisters. And that's what we do. And then in verse 18 he says, this is just, verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou was young, you girded yourself and walked wherever you wanted to. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee where you wouldn't want to go. And Jesus, this spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. So here Jesus is just letting me know, it's like, look, when you were young, you did what you wanted to do, but you're going to be old and you're going to be taken to places that you might not want to go. And then what's he talking about? By what death he should have. So Jesus telling him how he's going to die, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we all knew that? Nope. Don't want to know. Thank you. Don't want to know. And then, I love this about Peter. And, you know, Lance always likes to talk about this, and so I'm going to share with you. Then Peter, turning about, sees the disciple whom Jesus loved, John, following, which also leaned on his breast at supper and said, Lord, who is he that betrayed me? Peter, seeing him, says to Jesus, Lord, what shall this man do? In other words, how's he going to die? Lord, what about him? You told me about me. Well, what about him? And Jesus says unto him, if I will that he tarry till I come. What is that to thee? How's that any of your business? Don't worry about things that don't have anything to do with you. But you follow me. And I've heard recently somebody being concerned about that. You know, about, well, what about them? What about them? I was like, what business is that of yours? You know, I'm not one, I will say this, but I won't say it. In my walk with the Lord, I know what I'm called to do. And I walk in that. To the very best of my ability to both hear and do, I walk in that. Whether you guys do or not, I can't do anything about that. You know, I'm not one, and those of you that have been around here for a lot of years know this. If you're not here, I'm probably not going to call you. I figure it's your business if you want to be here or not. It's not my business. And some people will be like, well, but you're the pastor, that's your job. No. I don't find that anywhere. Do I want everyone here that's supposed to be here? 100%. But I've learned over the years that I can't do anything about it if you want to be here or not. I mean, so me not calling you if you're not here, that doesn't mean that I don't want you here. That just means I respect your decisions. So please don't take it as that. If you do, then, oh well, I put it out there that I'm not going to. We can't look back and try to gain those back that have chosen to do something else. How many of people in here are Americans and free? Yeah, I don't think every hand would go up on that, okay? So, isn't it your decision Like, if you want to go out of town over the weekend, do you call me and ask permission? No, see, even to say that doesn't sound ridiculous. I don't expect you to. So, if you're not here, don't expect me. I respect your rights. Does that sound hard? No, I mean, it might to some. And I know that some, like, well, he didn't call. Well, you didn't call me. Tell me you were going to be there. It's okay. I wasn't offended. You know, if somebody's here or not here, I don't get offended by that. I just do what I'm called to do. You know, through the week, I've been up here by myself a lot lately. I'm enjoying it, quite frankly. I do miss human conversation sometimes, you know. But at the same time, it doesn't affect me doing and enjoying what I'm called to do. Now, I will say this, that everybody has the list of the names that were on there, right? If you notice somebody's not here and you want to call them, that's up to you. And if the question comes up in the midst of the conversation, well, I wonder why Pastor Danny's not calling. Just say, that's not what he does. Okay? But if somebody chooses to do something else on a Sunday morning or a Tuesday night or a Wednesday or whatever, it's okay. We're still going to do what we do. Is that fair? And not be offended or not be upset or not doubt, are we being effective in someone's life? What business is that of mine? I know the condition of the people. I do know that. That doesn't mean I can really do anything about it, except sow the word. So let's go to Mark. I've been having some fun with this study on 7. I really have. She's been doing that on Tuesday night, and it's something that is very familiar. Is just kind of resounding, just little pieces of greatness. In Mark chapter 4, verse 14, he's explaining the parable. And he says, the sower sows the word. And these are they by the wayside where the word is sown, but when they've heard, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their heart. All right, now let's stop there for a second. The ones that are by the wayside, what happens there? Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that's sown in their heart, right? That's the ones that are the wayside. That's the wayside. Everything else that we're about to look at, the devil had nothing to do with it. The only thing that the devil steals was the seed that's sown by the wayside. From here on out, you have to take the devil out of the equation. It can't be like Flip Wilson, the devil made me do it. Okay? I just know how old some people are. Right?
That was.
Yeah, so some of them go, who? So keep that in context here. Okay. Satan comes immediately and takes the word that's sown in their heart. the ones that are sown by the wayside. And these are they likewise, which are sown on stony ground, who've heard the word and immediately receive it with gladness, and have no root in themselves, and so endure for a time, but afterward, when affliction or persecution arise for the word's sake, immediately they're offended. Now that doesn't have anything to do with the devil, does it? No. And these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word, and the cares of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things enter in, choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Also doesn't have anything to do with the devil, does it? No. These are sown in good ground, but among thorns in the ground. And whose responsibility is it to till the ground? It's ours. It's like, I can't till your ground. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier. It's like, I can't do this. Come, don't come. Do, don't do. You're responsible to till your own ground, to prepare it, to get these things out of you. You're responsible for that. Because if you don't, then what? The cares of this world. What are the cares of this world? Your mind it's different for each one of us. My cares and concerns are different than yours. But if I don't keep those thorns out, then the cares of the world, and not riches, but the deceitfulness of riches. You know, nothing wrong with riches, but the deceitfulness of it, to think that that's really going to make a difference. If I had this, then I could do this. Now, admittedly, it probably takes a little pressure off. We were talking about Trump and, you know, what he's been going through, and, you know, with this constant harassment, constant barrage, whether it be with the FBI or a DA from New York or whoever it is. And I was talking to Dee about this. I was like, you know, I don't think this really changes how he would handle it, but I think it's kind of cool that he's a billionaire. So it does take some of the financial stress off of it. You know, at least he can afford the attorneys and stuff to, you know, deal with it for him.
For now.
But the deceitfulness of riches is to think that all that stuff keeps it from happening. And all that stuff makes a difference. Because it really doesn't. It just cushions it up a little bit. And then what? The lust of other things. Now, what's he talking about here? Things other than the word. The lust of other things. And it's, you've been teaching on this, and the simplicity of it is easy for us to get lost in. Because we just kind of read past, lust of other things, without really breaking that down and isolating what those other things are. It's anything other than the word. Anything. When you start doing something to walk in the word and to do this, I promise you're going to get challenged. Is that anything different than what I've said for the last 13 years? No. So why would anyone be surprised with that? Why would anybody start to question God? When we know we're going to be challenged, we know it. So why be surprised when it happens? It's going to happen. I have not told anybody ever that if you do this, then no bad things will happen to you. That's not how I live my life. I don't live a life absent from bad things happening. What I do live a life absent of is letting those things affect my direction. I'm good with that. Therefore, I don't get caught up in the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, or the lust of other things. And that lust of other things, if there's anything that went in your mind and you said, well, it can't be that, it's that.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, I promise you, because that's what happens to it. We'll get something in our mind, oh, well, that's not what it's talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So just keep that in mind that it's not the devil. He's only involved in the seed that's sown by the wayside. The rest of it, it's on us. And knowing that, it's like walking around with your pants unzipped. Everyone else can see it. But the ones that care will tell you, zip it up. Okay? And that's all right. But, oh man, I just hear people, well, the devil did this, the devil did this, God didn't do this. Not true. Not if you're grafted in. And if God didn't do it, why didn't he do it? Should it be maybe, like Dee said, missed something? I asking for something that he had no intention of doing, expecting something that I really didn't have the understanding of. It's not God's fault. It's not. And it's not the devil's fault either. We do have to take some responsibility. Like, if, videos we were watching earlier, if I accept that mark, chip, whatever, and start embracing all of that, and then I stand before God and knowing what happens if I do that, it ain't God's fault. It ain't the devil's fault either. Whose fault is it? It's my fault. I'm the one that had to put my palm out there and enter in the code and all that kind of personal information for it to activate. I'm the one that had to do that. That there's times where that little computer we've got up there on the fireplace panel starts acting up, and then I'll pop off. I think I'm just going to unplug it, and all of a sudden it does exactly what she'll say, go home, go home. And then it keeps doing it, and then I'll just say, maybe I should just unplug it. And then all of a sudden, is that real? I don't know, but it happens. I mean, we watch it happen. So does that mean that it's got a mind of its own? Well, if you listen to Elon Musk and some of the others, Bill Gates, they're developing them to have a mind of their own. So, you tell me. A couple of years ago when I did that teaching on Meta, I was like, man, this is weird. And yet, there it is. There it is. Well, we thought that, okay, he's laying off people, so they're struggling financially. No, he just got artificial intelligence and little bots to do the work. He's actually making more money now because he's not having to pay people. And probably not as much stress in his life. By not having to deal with people. It's true. So all these things that seem crazy, they're not. I know I'm keeping that in front of us, but guys, it's only been 3 years. I know to a 10-year-old that might sound like a long time. Or to a 4-year-old, that is a long time. I know it's 5. But to the rest of us, it's only been 3 years. And as long as we're still here, we can't drop our guard. And if it seems like, and we've talked about this, but can't you just move on to something else? Not really, because these new things keep happening that apply to this. So, I don't know, I guess as long as we're here on this earth, we've got to be sober and vigilant, because what? Our adversary walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He's not going to stop. And as much as I would like to tell you that relax, no, don't. Because the moment you do, you fall into something else. It's just the way it is. And there's so many things going on right now, a lot of them are public, a lot of them aren't, but that are they're gonna make us be alert if we're not paying attention. I mean, they are. So, in the midst of that, first, know Jesus. Give your life to him. I know that some of you are little, remember, you've got 800 or so other people watching that need to hear this same thing. People that we might be their church. So we're responsible more than just here. The sower sows the word. And that's what we are, as sowers. We're not the others. We're the sowers. My ground is good. I promise. We're sowers of the word. We good? Yes. All right. Lord, thank you for exactly who you are. God, thank you for your people. The ones who are called by your name, the ones who have decided that they're not going to lay down, they're not going to comply to the enemy, and we're not going to comply to the world. God, I thank you for the Holy Spirit living inside of us to lead and guide us into all truth. And Lord, I thank you that you dwell in your secret place and abide under your shadow. And God, we are more than conquerors. We're overcomers. Lord, just continue to bless your people and meet their need. In Jesus' name, amen.